Yeah, so much for avoiding a rock roll, huh?
Well, I finally got a proper ride in at Galbraith, and now I'm officially jealous of everyone who lives in Bellingham. This place is amazing, and I really only toured a fraction of it. I'll post a link to the GPS track of my ride in the description to this video because although it was only a small part of Galbraith, I do have some thoughts. But before I get to those thoughts, I needed to navigate to patreon.com/voiceovertrails today and sign up to support informational content like this. The two sandwich 2,500 feet of climbing ride that I did starts in the Dollar Lot, which is a parking area on private land where you pay $1 per person to park, and I'll gladly pay $1 for parking, especially here as parking is scarce around Galbraith. The best strategy to approach Galbraith is really to live in Bellingham. Because if you live in Bellingham, Galbraith really is a ride-to-your-ride kind of destination. Now, they are currently working on a larger parking area down on Samish Way, which is really, really close to the Dollar Lot. But either way, you'll have to ride up this private road to get into the park. It feels kind of wrong, but eventually you'll see the trails and people running and riding them, and you'll know you're in the right place. That said, you need to study trail forks before riding here and plan out your route. Either that, or ride with a local. I compromised. I got trail suggestions from a local and then found a route on Trail Forks that included those two trails, modified it, and put it in my GPS computer. Before I get too far into this review, I should tell you which trails I rode, as Galbraith looks like a spaghetti bowl. The two trails Jeff Kendall Weed told me to ride were Devilcross and Happy Hour, so I had to find a route that included those. In order to get to those trails, I had to ride up Three Pigs and Huff and Puff, grab a couple of connector trails, and then return on Cheech and Chong's Wild Ride and rank advancement. There was logging going on the south side of the park the day that we rode it, so there was some strange routing, but eventually we ended up on the Three Pigs climbing trail, which I loved. Climbing trails can get stultifyingly dull, even if they're an easier way to get to the top, but the Three Pigs trail does not do that. It's a genuinely interesting and fun climbing trail with enough grade reversals, rocks, and little changes to keep it engaging. Continuing with the fairy tale gimmick, the next trail up was Huff and Puff, another climbing trail that joins with Three Pigs. By the way, I just need to point out that the trail signs in this park are awesome. Much love to whoever's creating all this art. I absolutely loved it. Huff and Puff starts out a lot like Three Pigs, but does eventually get quite a bit steeper, which will totally have you huffing and puffing before arriving at this clear cut where there's a nice view out to the Sound. You can even see Mount Constitution from here. Huff and Puff ends at Wonderland, which is one of a few trails that all intersect at this weird little intersection here. So follow the Cheshire Cat until you get to this intersection with the road that ends in a fun little roll down feature. I love how the builders at Galbraith never miss an opportunity to create a feature out of something. Check out this viewpoint. There's a great view of Mount Baker here. This is also a good resting spot. I love that they've built all these shelters all over the park. This is just one of many things that make me seriously jealous of folks who get to live in Bellingham. Poke around on Trail Forks until you're good and properly sure that you're on Dad Bod. Dad Bod has this one pretty sketchy drop on it that you'll totally be able to ride if you don't see it coming, but if you do see it coming and then slow down, you're going to have to walk down it. When we got to the road crossing on Dad Bod, we turned left on the road and proceeded to Keystone. Keystone had one of my favorites of all the trail signs I saw in the park, by the way. The section of Keystone that leads to the top of Devilcross is pretty short, but it provides for a nice warm-up experience. It's a blue trail, but it's more of a Canadian blue experience. The entrance to Devilcross is relatively unassuming. Like any proper Northern Washington black trail, it starts with a little bit of a climb. There are some granite rocks just to give you a preview, and then suddenly this trail gets going, but just for a little bit before it comes to a road crossing. If we hadn't had our little GPS navigators with us, we would have had to poke around a bit more to figure out that we needed to turn right on the road and then left at the next intersection and ride down the road a little distance to pick up the trail again. And this is where the trail really picks up the pace and gets exciting. It's a pretty tight and raw trail that definitely trends more toward the hand-built side of things. The first section here kind of rides the top of a narrow ridgeline that currently affords some okay views into Canada that will close up as the clear cuts grow in. Then the trail jumps back into the forest and arrives at this rock roll. One of my favorite things about this rock roll was that if you try to take what looks like the safety line to the left, you will only be greeted by another rock roll, which is even bigger and longer. That's why this is rated a black trail. There's no easier way down. I'd recommend riding this and not walking it, by the way. I think trying to walk down that rock roll is going to be even more dangerous than just ride it. Trust me. I loved how off-camber and wackadoodle this trail is. It's another one of those little like lumpy and rooty upper body workouts that are the important difference between a true mountain bike trail and just a brake burner. This is a bring your own flow experience. The trail builders wanted you to have an opportunity to progress, and I really loved how raw this trail feels right where it needs to feel raw. But the descent on this trail is only about 1.5 miles, over which it loses around 750 feet. And when the descending fun is over, you'll find yourself at this nice little lunch spot in a valley at the confluence of a couple of lovely little creeks. There is, of course, the small matter of the climb out of here, which in our case was going to be another 750 feet to get to the top of Happy Hour, the blue trail that descends to the same place. And you know, that's just what mountain biking is all about. It's always about the additional climbing. I'm going to skip over all the climbing stuff because it's boring. Plot a course on trail forks and find your way to the top of Happy Hour. Happy Hour is just under 1 mile long and loses about 600 feet of elevation over that distance. It seems to start auspiciously enough, and true to its blue designation, it's a little bit wider and slightly less raw than Devilcross. There are no mandatory rock rolls on this trail, in case that was something you're worried about, but there is this really steep optional rock roll that includes a ride around. There are people in this world like David Stiles and Jason Ding who are capable of talking me into riding features like this, but they weren't here. So I took the safety line. And the nice thing about this trail is that the ride around, the safety line, while lower consequence, isn't really any easier. This is as it should be. I love trails that ride like this, with all the root wads and obstacles you have to pick up the bike to clear. This is accessible technical riding at its finest. This trail is usable by intermediate riders in the sense that an intermediate rider won't find any mandatory features, but at the same time, they'll be getting off the bike a lot. Take the left fork at this intersection, by the way, after which the trail takes on a somewhat rowdier character. That's kind of the overall character of this trail in general. If Devilcross is spicy, then Happy Hour seemed kind of rowdy to me. Riders are all still responsible for carrying their own flow on this, but the setup to each maneuver is just a little bit more obvious. I loved how there's a roll down on the embankment at this crossing. This kind of attention to not being attentive to details is the essence of a good mountain bike trail. The drops just never stop on Happy Hour, by the way, from top to bottom. Every root, rock, and obstruction in the tread was treated as an opportunity rather than an obstacle to be cleared. I'd love to ride this trail about 20 more times so that I could get some more practice holding speed on all these features. And soon, maybe too soon for a trail this fun, it ends at the same place Devilcross ended. From here, the best way to get back to a parked car near Samish Way is to get on the 2000 road and climb it to this trail, the aptly named Here to There, and ride here to there over to the top of Cheech and Chong's Wild Ride. Gosh, what a sophisticated name for a trail, right? And if you were looking for a trail that gives you the flow instead of making you carry it yourself, well, here you go. This is a very well designed and executed progression trail with a wall ride, short little kickers, and manageable 5 to 10 foot tables for all your progression needs. This was a lot of fun. And I guess if you wanted to give yourself more experience before going and riding Happy Hour, then this would be a good place to do some laps and get used to handling your bike. There need to be more trails like this across the Pacific Northwest because there always seems to be a gap. Get it? There always seems to be a gap between featureless multi-user trails and super technical advanced lines with big mandatory features or huge gaps. And a lot of riders who could be progressing are kind of trapped in that zone. They can't quite progress because there aren't trails that allow them to do so. This is one of those rare ones that exists in that middle zone of progression. After Cheech and Chong's, we proceeded left down the road over to the top of Meth Lab, which we used as a connector to access rank advancement. As a former Boy Scout, I appreciate the reference. Rank advancement is just a fun middle zone sort of kind of tech descent, at least at the beginning. It's mostly just a trail that goes down the hill until it arrives at these practice drops over here. From there, it sort of just goes down the hill before exiting onto the logging road. Once arriving at this road, you can just leave the way you came in. No big deal. This place is awesome. This place is so awesome. I can't wait to get back. Now, I'd like to take this moment to thank all my Patreon supporters, especially my Lomi Goodness level sponsors, Andy Suri, Charles Kim, Damon Corey, Randy Relaford, and Ty Morgan Marbit. I'd also like to thank all my Hero Dirt level sponsors, earning their special mention at the end of this video: Bryce Ulrich, Heather von Valkenburg, Jason Moore, and Pedro Cantarini. If you'd like to join this crowd of discerning dirt connoisseurs, navigate to patreon.com today to toss your support to informational content. Now, get out there and go ride your bike.